people. Today we're in Nicaragua for another episode of the Ski Bum Surf Guide. Today we're coming to you from Popoyo, Nicaragua. This is one of my favorite places to surf. It's been pretty much a constant in my life for about the last almost 2 decades. I've been spending months here a year. I've seen it change, I've seen it grow, I've seen it expand. It's gone from a hardcore surfer's paradise to like an everyday accessible surfer's paradise. And I just want to share with you some of my insights and talk about the waves. And yeah, we're gonna dive right in. Okay, first off, these days it's only about 2 hours from the Managua airport. You're gonna fly to Managua. You could take a taxi from Managua to here. You can take a bus from Managua to here. A taxi will cost you about $80 to $100. Yeah, it's really easy to get here. If you're coming here from Managua and you're renting a house, you really want to stop and get groceries in Rivas. There are no big grocery stores here, but there's a Maxipali in Rivas, and you can just stop and buy groceries. Other than that, there are a few stores around that are going to have some basics like meat and cheese and beer and drinks and snacks, but the selection is going to be pretty limited, so you're really going to want to stock up before you come here. So there's a ton of waves in the Popoyo area. It's called Popoyo. It's named after Finca Popoyo, which is where one of the most famous waves here is located. But in reality, none of the towns here are actually called Popoyo. Around Popoyo, you've got, Las Salinas, also known as Guascate, to the north, and then to the south, you've got Jiquilet and Limon. And that's where Rancho Santana is located. And a lot of people know Rancho Santana. A lot of people spend a lot of time in Santana, but a lot of people don't realize that the beach is actually called Playa Jiquilete. You got Playa Gigante to the south. A lot of people end up staying at camps in Playa Gigante, but I will tell you that there's not any real surf in Playa Gigante. You can walk to Playa Amarillo from Playa Gigante, but the surf at Playa Amarillo is at best lackluster. That being said, you can still have fun there. Most people who stay in Playa Gigante are going to be staying at camps and taking boats on the daily to other breaks. So as you can see here, we've got a surf map of all the breaks in the area. There's a high concentration of breaks with Popoyo centered right in the middle. If you're staying in Popoyo, it's best to stay in Guascate or Jiquilete or Limon. If you have a car, you can kind of stay anywhere in the surrounding area and have access to all of it. But if you're on foot, if you're going to be walking, which I highly recommend, the best place to stay is Guascate or Playa Jiquilete. There are stores, there are some services, there's lots of hotels and Airbnbs. If you stay in Guascate, you've got about a 5 to 7 minute walk to Popoyo. If you stay in Jiquilete, you've got about a 5-minute walk to Rancho Santana and a 10-minute walk to Popoyo. And you can also walk to Santana from Jiquilete. It'll take you about from Guascate. That'll take you about 10 to 15 minutes. So with the surf breaks, we're going to go straight into the surf breaks, and to the far north, we're going to go north to south. To the far north, you're going to have Playgrounds, and Playgrounds is also one of the most famous breaks here in Nicaragua. It's an awesome, perfect, like A-frame reef peak. Access is highly limited. If you're going to stay at Playgrounds, you're going to stay at Playgrounds Surf Camp, and you're going to pay about $2,000 to $2,500 a week. And make sure you get health insurance that has a helicopter included if you stay out there, because people have gotten hurt out there, and a lot of times you have to cross a river to get out of there by car, and if it's high tide, there's no crossing the river. So yeah, get insurance if you're going to stay at Playground Surf Camp. If you can afford $2,500 a week, you can definitely afford the $100 a month or whatever it is for health insurance. The next break we're going to talk about is Lance's Left. Lance's Left is a left-hand point break. It's located just outside of Astillero, a small fishing village that in previous times was very famous for people getting robbed. That's not as common today. That being said, if you're going to be hanging out in Astillero, don't take your fancy camera equipment. Tony Roberts got his camera stolen there a few years ago, famously. People get robbed there still. You just need to be careful in Astillero. If you're going to come in, you need to just be aware. I wouldn't say it's necessarily dangerous, but it's the kind of place where there's a little more danger still. It's still kind of the Wild West. It's not as developed and groomed as necessarily the rest of the area is these days. Lanceslov itself is an awesome left-hand point break. It's kind of mushy. It can be heavy, but not really. It can hold pretty much any swell in Nicaragua that Nicaragua gets, which is kind of nice because the region doesn't have a lot of spots that can hold any swell. It gets better after a little bit period, and it's better at mid-tide. If you're going to be surfing there, you need to watch out for sea urchins. When you get in, you can kind of jump off the rocks if you be careful, if you know what you're doing. If not, I recommend just getting in from the beach and being careful and taking the long paddle out and watching out for sea urchins, because it's definitely the most urchin-infested spot in Nicaragua. And I've definitely seen people just, you know, get urchined hard. The next break we're going to talk about is the actual Astillero beach break. There's a river mouth in Astillero. The beach break really only works during the wet season when the river has been running. That being said, when the river has been running, this beach break can just be pumping. Once again, it's another beach break that's better like mid to high tide. But yeah, you need to have the strong offshores, and you need to have the river mouth have been running a little to build up the sandbanks in order to make it just not a big square. Another rig we're going to talk about is just actually north of Lanceslov and Astillero. It's in a nature refuge called Chaco Centre. It's a really quiet, really empty beach break. You're going to have to drive in with a four-wheel drive. You're going to have to cross a river. You can also come here on a boat. It's a turtle reserve, so it's going to be closed for like half the year, like July, mid-July to like December. You're not going to be able to go there. So yeah, it can be better actually in the dry season, but it can be also good in the wet season or the early shoulder season before it closes. You're taking a risk going there, but you're also taking the chance of being able to surf alone, which is not as common in Nicaragua. So after Astillero, you're going to get closer. Moving south, you're going to get closer to the Popoyo region, Las Salinas, Guascate. There's some beach breaks in Guascate. I'm not going to tell you where they are, but if you're willing to explore, you can find them. They can be good, especially once again if the river's running. Popoyo proper, which is the area in between the village of Guascate and Magnificent Rock and Playa Gigante, you're going to find the Popoyo reef break, which is probably the most famous reef break in Nicaragua. There's multiple camps here: Nico Waves, Popoyo Surf Lodge. This was the first area that was really pioneered in the Tola region. You can score here pretty much every day of the year. Popoyo is like the most consistent break, maybe even in all of Central America. The left is better than the right, but that being said, the right can be insanely good. And in the wet season, when the rivers have been running, the sand kind of fills in on the reef and makes the right even better and having more chances of barrel than the left. In general, it's kind of a mushy, fun wave. It gets compared to trestles. It can also have a crowd level that's similar to trestles. Yeah, it's one of my favorite waves, but I only really surf it nowadays at low tide, when low tide is early in the morning for dawn patrol, because, you know, in the afternoon, at sunset, even kind of late in the morning, it can get really crowded. And if you're going to get cut off by people, it's definitely the place you're going to get cut off around here. And because it's so friendly to beginners and people who are not necessarily as advanced in surfing, everyone can enjoy it when it's small. And so that's going to bring even more of a crowd. Popoyo is, however, one of the spots that can handle the swell in this area. When it gets big, Popoyo can be good to epic, and that's when you'll see some of those pictures from some of those famous photographers. And Popoyo can be really good when it's big. Bring your step up. I definitely got one of the best barrels of my life at Popoyo. I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years ago here. It's definitely possible to get barreled there when it's big. Other than that, it doesn't really barrel. In the Popoyo area, there's also several other breaks. There's a couple other points, both on the inside of Popoyo and on the other side of Popoyo towards Guascate. I'm going to let you find those for yourself. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of spots around Popoyo. It's super consistent. And if you walk in from Guascate or Gigante, you won't have to pay to park. So highly recommend. The next break moving south from Popoyo is going to be Beginner Bay. Beginner Bay also has self-explanatory. It's a longboarding peak. That's one of the only peaks around here that is going to be good for beginners, hence the name Beginner Bay. It's always going to be crowded with foam boards, longboards, surf camps, surf instructors. There's a left point at the top of Beginner Bay that needs a little bit more swell to work. It breaks over shallow rocks. It's called Mag Rock Point. It's one of my favorite waves in the area. It's kind of a novelty wave. It's definitely not perfect. You can definitely hit the rocks, but that being said, it's super fun. Me and my girlfriend surf there a lot at dead low tide when it's breaking over the rocks, and we hit the rocks and we laugh about it and have a good time. It's a great place to surf just if you want a different vibe. Sometimes if you want to surf alone, I'm not saying you will always surf it alone, but you know, if you dawn patrol early in the morning, low tide, you will definitely have a chance of surfing it alone. So yeah, enjoy. Crossing over into the Playa Jiquilete area, you've got Jiquilete and Rancho Santana. Everyone knows Rancho Santana. There are famous peaks that are over by Rancho Santana that barrel pretty much every day. It works better with a little less period, but it can still work at 15, 16, 17 seconds if the swell's from the right direction and the wind is from the right direction, and you catch the right tide. I generally find that the whole entire Jiquilete and Santana area works better mid to high tide, but that being said, sometimes when the rivers have been running, you can find some sandbars out there even at low. This is one of my favorite beach breaks in all of Central America. I probably spend the most time at Playa Jiquilete and Rancho Santana when I come here. It's super fun. There's peaks for all levels, kind of. It's more intermediate to advanced because the peaks are kind of steep, but if it's small, all levels can really enjoy it. And what's really great about Playa Jiquilete is it's a 1.5 kilometer long beach, and you can literally just find waves everywhere on the beach if you're willing to look for them. The crowd really concentrates towards the south end at Rancho Santana. That's where the parking is. That's where the resort is. You can pay $300 a night to stay here, or you can stay in Jiquilete for $25 a night. My house is $25 a night or less for on a monthly rate, and we surf the same breaks that the people that are paying $300 a night pay. So it's like, yeah, this place for immediately south of Playa Jiquilete and Rancho Santana, you've got a break called Playa Rosata. We used to call it Perfect Peak. It's a left-hand point. It needs a little bit more swell to work. It only works low to mid-tide. After mid-tide, you're going to have a really high chance of hitting really sharp, gnarly rocks and getting the crap cut out of you. Don't go there. And honestly, if you're not staying in Rancho Santana, you have to walk around a headland over a gnarly reef and rock set up, and all that gets covered in water by about an hour after mid-tide. So if you're going to go there, you really want to go on like outgoing mid-tide. That way you have time to surf for a little while and then walk back, because people have gotten caught over there and had to paddle back or even tried to walk back on Rancho Santana, and the security will bounce you. They will kick you out back to the ocean. And yeah, it's not a good thing to be stuck over there at high tide and not have a way to get back to the beach. It's a really good left. It can barrel. It can also be a closeout. It can also not break at all. It's kind of fickle. Finally, moving into the last little region south of Popoyo, you've got Playa Colorados. This includes Panga Drops, which is a really consistent A-frame reef break that can be a slab when it's big, and it can be mellow and fun when it's small. Works at all tides. It works with all swells. When it's 2 foot everywhere else, it'll be 4 feet at Panga Drops. And yeah, it's one of the most consistent waves in the area. Sometimes it gets crowded, sometimes it's not. It's just kind of a throw up. So I highly recommend you check it out. There's lefts and rights. Inside of Panga Drops, you're heading down the beach and you've got Playa Colorados, which is probably one of the most photographed, most famous waves in the area. With that being said, it's not one of my favorites. It really tends to just close out a lot. If the rivers have been running, it's more peaky, but it's the kind of place where you can break a board when it's like 2 to 3 feet or 4 feet sometimes. I've definitely seen people smash their boards when it's small. And I think 90% of the waves I've caught there have been closeouts. That being said, if you catch it on the right swell, from the right angle, with the right sandbars, you will get the peak of your life. With that also being said, it's a fancy gringo resort that costs it's like Rancho Santana. It costs $200 or $300 a night. If you're coming here if you're going there on bike, you have to go on the gate. You have to pay to get in. It's not the most surf bum friendly place to surf, especially since there, in my opinion, are better peaks all around at beach breaks that you can find and not have to pay for, and not be surrounded by people, you know, paying $300 a night with their $1,000 boards and blah blah, you know what I'm. Finally, moving south of Colorado's, you've got Playa Manzanillo. Manzanillo is a left-hand point break. Manzanillo is kind of mellow. It works in all swells. And yeah, you can definitely score here when it's breaking big everywhere else, but don't go here when it's small. You'd have to take a boat to go here. You can't really access it by land. And yeah, and that's all I'm going to say about that. If you want to go, you need to get on a boat. You need to find a captain. You need to find an operator. And you need to go there on boat. It can be fun. It's pretty mellow. And generally, if you go there on a boat, your boat will probably be the only people there. So yeah, that's the benefit. I hope you guys have enjoyed this little surf guide of the Popoyo area. I highly recommend checking it out. They're building a new highway through the area that's going in right now. It's only going to become more accessible over the next few years. I hope everybody's liking the content on this channel. Like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Shredder out.